Well guys, I have a bit of a confession to make. I am an absolute sucker when it comes to big vehicles with premium features and premium price tags, and what we're in this week is certainly no exception. What's good everybody, and welcome back to another car review here on the driveway, where this week we've been driving the 2020 Toyota Highlander Platinum. Now if you're somebody like me who has a little bit more of an expensive taste, then stay tuned, because in this review we're going to take this thing for a spin and show you everything you need to know about the very best of Toyota's mid-size SUV offering. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so welcome to the 2020 Toyota Highlander Platinum. Now, as someone who has spent now almost a week with this thing, I will tell you that if you are someone who is looking for that premium feeling in your vehicle, but you don't want to pay for that premium badge and all the little nickel and dime stuff that comes with it, this is by far one of the best options out there, and you'll see what I mean as we go along. But talking about paying the price, let's talk about that, shall we? Because with a name like Highlander Platinum, stuff like this isn't going to be cheap. And this one isn't even the full title. It is Platinum All-Wheel Drive. So that does add a little bit to the price. If you want the all-wheel drive, the standard MSRP is $48,800. Plus a few little extras that we have here. It's $99 for a universal tablet holder, which I'll show you that here in a bit. $350 for the roof-mounted crossbars. $318 for the carpeted floor mats. And last but not least, the biggest charge of this whole car is $425 for the optional moon dust metallic exterior that we have on my test car. When you add all that up, plus the $1,120 delivery processing and handling fee, on this example, it comes to $51,112, which is pretty comparative to a lot of other fully loaded three-row crossovers and SUVs. But does that price tag equate to one of the best non-premium driving experiences you'll find? Well, let's fire this baby up and let's see. So I've been driving around in this Highlander now for almost a week, and I will say that in that time frame, something pretty interesting has actually happened. No, I've not gone crazy, but I am 110% in love with this car. Normally for me, as I said before, I like a big vehicle that has all the premium features that you could possibly want. So yes, I do have more of an expensive taste. But to me, a big vehicle like this, or even a mid-size SUV as Toyota calls this one, doesn't mean that it is the most luxurious and best way to get you, your friends, and your family around. No, I'm one that likes to travel, so a car like this for me means a road trip. And unfortunately, during the time that I've had this car, I haven't had the opportunity to do such a thing. However, I have been itching to drive this thing every single day. And it's not down to the performance of this car, it's just the way this thing feels out here on the road. And even now, as I quietly drive through Kenswick Park Nature Center here in Houston, Texas, this car feels as smooth, as solid, and as quiet as you could possibly want. This almost feels, and this is high praise for a Toyota, it feels like a Lexus. I'm surprised for the price tag and the amount of stuff you get with this car and the ride quality it delivers that this thing doesn't have a Lexus badge on it. Now at this point, I would normally be talking about this car's performance and what engine it has and so on. But that's not really the point of the Highlander. It's not meant to be a sporty vehicle, even though it does have a drive mode select with a sport mode in it. I haven't used it one single bit this entire time. Now, if you want to talk a few numbers, yes, the engine is a 3.5 liter direct import fuel injected V6 with 295 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. Underneath, I have an 8-speed automatic transmission, and in this case, Toyota's dynamic torque vectoring all-wheel drive. Now, I could talk about that for days, but that would take an entire video in and of itself. What matters, though, is that, well, with a big engine and all-wheel drive, this car is a bit thirsty. You'll be lucky if you reach the EPA estimated 20 miles per gallon in the city and 27 miles per gallon on the highway. During the time that I've had this car this whole week, I've only managed about 19.5. So aside from the fact that it has somewhat decent performance for an almost 4,500 pound car, that is not the point of this vehicle. The Highlander is not designed to put the sport in sport utility vehicle. What it is designed to do, especially for this Platinum model, is when you get in it day after day, it is meant to encase you in one of the most serene experiences that I've ever felt in any Toyota vehicle. And that does include some Lexus products as well. Every time I've gotten in this thing, I've been admiring just the visibility in here. The 360 degrees I have in here is amazing. I can see out of pretty much every window. The independent McPherson suspension in front, multi-link suspension out back is doing its job to perfection. This thing doesn't even have air suspension in it, and it's just so beautiful and buttery smooth out on the road. Not to mention, as we pull up to a stoplight here, I go ahead and just gently roll to a stop, let the auto start stop system that comes standard on this car do its thing, and I don't really even have to raise my voice to have a conversation with you. It is just so peaceful in here, and that's something I think a lot of people look for in a crossover or an SUV. Some of the other ones, even ones in the over $50,000 category like this, can be a little bit noisy, they can be a little too harsh on the suspension, and sometimes they just don't feel like they're truly worth the price tag. But if I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and actually go and buy a vehicle of this size and price tag, this one would be well at the top of my shopping list. So now that we're getting up to some much greater speeds, I want you guys to just listen for a second. You see what I mean? Talking about how quiet it is in here, it's unreal. Now, while I could spend days talking about how this thing drives, there are some other aspects to this vehicle that may or may not make it feel like it's worth its 50 grand price tag. So, what I want to do now is head to a little bit of a quieter spot and pull over and talk about the way that this thing looks. So when it comes to the looks department, the Highlander certainly is a bit of a stunner. Now in this specification with this moon dust metallic exterior, I absolutely love the way this car looks. The beautiful bluish silver hues of this paintwork really accent things like those 20-inch wheels down there, and all of the bits of chrome and everything in this car really bring the package together as a whole. Now, if it was in a different color like black, white, silver, anything like that, I may reconsider that thought. But for right now, from where I'm standing looking at this thing, I absolutely love it. Now, this being the Platinum, of course, it is chock full of the best technology Toyota has. So you have LED headlights here, maybe not the best, including the halogen turn signals here, but you do also have the LED daytime running lights, LED fog lights down below. The headlights do have auto high beam assist and the auto leveling and adjusting as standard here on the Platinum. And of course, all across the front, including inside of this large gloss black and chrome finished grille, we have the entire Toyota Safety Sense System 2.0. So not only do you have things like the all-speed radar cruise control, pre-collision management with pedestrian detection, but you also have some fun things like cyclist detection and roadside recognition. Also, just to complete the technological standpoint just here at the front, the Platinum also comes standard with a full 360-degree around view monitor. Now, when you look at it from the side, the Highlander is no doubt a very sizable vehicle on its own. This thing stretches nearly 195 inches from nose to tail, which means it is pretty much on par with a lot of other big or semi-big or mid-size, in this case, 3-row family crossovers. Now, standing here at the side, I have to draw your attention to these, the 20-inch smoke silver finished aluminum alloy wheels. These are the only wheels that you can get for the Highlander Platinum, and they really look sharp. Of course, you have the 4-wheel disc brakes hidden behind, and these wheels are wrapped in some serious 235/55 series Bridgestone rubber. Now, just like all the other times we've gone down the sides of vehicles, when it comes to the Highlander's side technology, so to speak, it's really nothing too extraordinary, but it still does give you the feeling that you're in something very nice. So to start with, we have body colored side view mirrors with the chrome accented LED turn signals. These are not power folding, so anytime you lock or unlock the vehicle, they do stay stationary, which I kind of wish Toyota had put the power folding mirrors on here. I guess maybe as something like a little add-on, but still, nonetheless, that's just kind of a nitpicky thing for me. You do have the cameras underneath each mirror, which does complete the side half of that 360 around view monitor. Also underneath here, you have puddle lamps that light up when you unlock the vehicle, and at night, it actually projects the Highlander name down there on the ground. Of course, here, at least on the front 2 door handles, we do have Toyota's standard smart key entry system, which does include a Highlander emblazoned key fob here with all the typical functions: lock, unlock, raise the power tailgate, and panic, not to mention the releasable key blade that comes out of the bottom. And of course, you have all the touch points for locking and unlocking the vehicle. So to lock it, you just touch the little ribs on the front edge of the handle, or to unlock it, you just simply grab the back of the handle as normal. Now, coming up here to the roof real quick, of course, we do have a couple of little extras. The first of which is that optional set of crossbars up here for the roof. Again, that's $350 if you want those added onto your new Highlander. For me personally, I like them up there because I take a lot of trips, and it would be no problem to mount a nice roof box up there. They are mounted on some beautiful platinum silver roof rails. And then, of course, all the way across the top, this Platinum Highlander does include a standard panoramic moonroof. Right. Now, as I look at this new Highlander from a rearward perspective, the design philosophy almost seems like an exact copy of what is up front. For starters, like the shape of the grille, you have this large indentation in the back of this standard power tailgate that we have on this example, which also does include hands-free assist, which is one of those ubiquitous ones where you kick your foot under the rear bumper and somehow hope you can find the sensor to open the tailgate itself. You do also have at least partial LED taillights back here. You have the LED main bars, LED reversing lights, but then again you have incandescent turn signals. I kind of wish, again, Toyota had made these lights, including the ones in the front, full LED everything, but again, that's a little nitpicky thing of mine. Under the trunk, you will notice something rather strange. You have 2 cameras back here. So the one angled down, that is your backup camera, but the one here on the right seems like a little bit of a mystery. Inside of the auto dimming rear view mirror, there is a switch, which if you pull it up like you would if you were normally dimming the mirror down in a manual operated one, this camera actually activates and provides a high definition view of the view out the back. And you can even activate this while you're driving. It is not one that disappears over a certain speed. It can be on full time. And lastly, of course, we do have the sensors lining the rear bumper of this vehicle just underneath this nice little polished chrome accent, which I really love here on the back. Those rear sensors, again, are for the rear half of that intuitive park assist. Now, regardless of whether you use the standard Toyota key fob or the hands-free access system or even the trigger located under the Toyota emblem in the back of the Highlander, when it comes to the cargo access here for the Highlander itself, it is still quite the spacious vehicle. And you do see a few sort of typical nuances that you would get in a 3-row midsize SUV. First off, you do have a decent sized shelf here behind the 3rd row of seats. Now, the 3rd row of seats are 60/40 split fold. You can accommodate 3 people across the back versus a lot of other competitors which only offer 2 seats across the back here. And just behind the third row of seats, you're only looking at about 16 cubic feet of space. However, if you flip up these little latches here, fold this third row of seats forward, that extends to 48.4 cubic feet of space. And if you put down that second row of captain's chairs in addition to the third row, that extends to 84.3 cubic feet of space, which means that if you have a family with a lot of stuff, or perhaps you need to pack a lot of stuff for a vacation, the Highlander has you covered for storage space alike. Now, as quick as I was to praise the outside of this Highlander, when it comes to its interior, well, there are a couple of things that I could pick holes in, but we'll get to those here in just a bit. But just look at this beautiful beige leather interior that I have on this car. For starters, I love things like the diamond quilting that we have here in the perforations in the middle of these seats. The front seats here for the Platinum are standard heated and ventilated for both occupants. They are both power adjustable, although the driver is the only one to get the 2-way lumbar support here. Of course, you have the distance and recline controls. Not to mention, for the driver, you have a 2-person memory setting up here on the door. And can I just say, while I'm on the door here real quick, I love this sort of wood accenting that they've given here. It may sort of look and feel like plastic, but at least the design element is there. And I also love the 2-tone accents, not only of the black and beige on some parts of the interior, but this sort of cocoa brown color as well. I really like that color, especially how it contrasts with the beige interior as well. Almost kind of reminds me of like Hershey's chocolate and vanilla. It's absolutely delicious looking. Now, sitting behind the wheel of the Highlander definitely feels like a very spacious but very special place to be. As far as the space goes, I didn't have to move the seat back too far to accommodate my 6'1" self with more legs than torso, and I really didn't have to move the steering wheel all that much either, because as you can see, I have boatloads of legroom down there. Not to mention, I have a ton of headroom in here as well. Now, when it comes to looking ahead of you, first of all, look at the size of that windshield. It is absolutely huge, and that does give a lot of visibility in here as well. But when it comes to the technology side of things, everything is pretty rudimentary Toyota. I mean, if you look at the steering wheel here, most of these controls are for the dynamic radar cruise control. So things like turning it on, resuming, setting speed, the distance sensor. You also have the button for the lane departure warning system with active steering assist. Not to mention a few hands-free radio controls like the Seek Track button, and a few more over here, including voice recognition and the volume control. You do have a small aero pad up here for the thin film transistor display, dominating the middle of the gauge cluster up there. Not to mention things like the back button, which also coincides with the gauge cluster up there, and hands-free Bluetooth to go along with it. As you go down underneath, you do have a manual tilting and telescoping function, so the lever is on the left-hand side of the column. And continuing even further over underneath the instrumentation dimming and trip functions, you do have a couple of other things over here and only one little blank button. The first button that's lit up right here, this is the auto high beam assist. You have the button to open the tailgate, you have a heated steering wheel, you have heated windshield washer fluid, and then you have a camera button that activates that 360-degree around view monitor. When the vehicle is stationary, you can actually switch it between 2 consecutive views, and all 4 cameras will come to life to give you a full panoramic view of the outside of the car. Now, as many buttons as you may find in front of the driver, the most dominant presence inside of this entire front area has to be right here. To start with, we have a 12.3-inch multifunction touchscreen display that includes things not only like Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, and Amazon Alexa compatibility, but it also includes things such as Toyota's dynamic navigation system, which, to be honest with you, I'd rather just use CarPlay or Android Auto using Google Maps or Waze. Is a much easier function for me. And not only that, you don't have to pay for it through the Toyota service department to update it every so often. Now, as far as everything else, it can be a little bit confusing because you have 2 separate split screens up here. So to the left, this one is primarily things for the Bluetooth connectivity and the audio controls, but over here on the right, you actually have controls for things like the heated and ventilated seat functions, the climate controls, your active driving profile, and just general information overall, like for instance how economically you're driving. So I've been driving this car primarily in eco mode, so this is telling me exactly how the car is behaving as I'm driving along. Now, within this infotainment system, as much as I love playing with all the buttons and settings and everything else, of course, you know me, I love my music. And this has an 11-speaker JBL premium audio system. So not only do you have speakers like up there in the A-pillars, you have them in the doors, rear doors, of course. This also does come with a subwoofer and an amplifier included with it. And the sound it produces is just incredible. Now, aside from that glorious audio system, within the infotainment system, there are a few more functions that you can play around with, all thanks to these 4 little buttons here on the bottom. So you have home, you have the main menu, which we're in right now, you have the audio function, and then of course the map button, which I pressed earlier. So within this menu setting here, you have things such as setting destinations, playing with your audio controls, Bluetooth, AM, FM, Sirius XM satellite radio, and so on. You have your Bluetooth telephone, you have the Toyota Entune app suite in here. The projection label, which is this one right here, that is how you access the Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. You have the generalized info, and of course setups for things like changing the color background and display for the entire infotainment system as a whole. As you move down from that, however, it doesn't take you much to get to things like the dual zone automated climate control in here. So on the left and far right of each of these controls, you have the buttons for the heated and ventilated seats, temperature controls on either side. Just in the middle of that, you have the automatic setting, the button to turn the system off, you have the fan speeds, and of course front and rear defrost with heated exterior mirrors. And not to mention on either side, you have some rather nice looking tuning and volume knobs as well. So the left one is for powering on the radio and changing the volume. Then you also have the tuning and scroll button over here just to the right of that. Now, aside from the simplicity of this giant infotainment screen and dual zone climate control system, there are some other notes that Toyota actually thought things through when they were creating this car. For starters, I love the storage space actually down here. There's no wireless charger up in here. That's actually down here in the center console, but you have things like a little flap, for example, that you can take off and actually bring your phone cords from the USBs down here in this little cubby hole up through and set your phone in there as well if you so desire. There's also some ambient interior lighting in here. I'm not sure how well you can see it, but it's sort of like an iridescent blue, and it shows up here in this little storage space. It's here inside of the door pockets. It's down there underneath the floor. So really it does provide a much more, I guess, premium feeling atmosphere in here in the right instances. And certainly Toyota again did think of people with a few excess items that may need to store them somewhere. As I was pointing out earlier, you do have the 3 USB ports located down here in the lower console. You have a nice little storage space right here that's probably big enough for at least a decent sized smartphone, to say the least. And then of course, as you come back, you have a nice big chunky shifter to grab onto, and again that controls the 8-speed electronically controlled transmission with intelligence. I have loved this transmission every time I drive this car. Of course, it does have that backup camera, as I was mentioning before. So you have the split screen with the panoramic view over here on the right and the main view over here on the left. You can actually change that view if you want a little bit more of a wide angle look, or maybe something a little bit closer. But for me, I keep it on the closest setting I possibly can. Just when I'm backing up, it's a little easier for me to use nonetheless. Also, as you can hear, when you put it back in park, you do have the automatic door lock. So once you put it in any gear other than park, those doors will automatically lock themselves, and they will only come unlocked when you put it back in park. As you come away from that, however, you do have 2 decently sized cup holders. I mean, I could put a large Coke from McDonald's in there, no problem. And then down here is the drive mode select system. So you have 3 main modes here. You have sport, normal, and eco, and it's just a simple little trigger. Now, it's not like where you push down for normal, push up for sport, and pull back for eco. You actually have to scroll through each drive mode. So that can be a little bit tedious, I guess, maybe not so much, but I find it a little easier with some other drive mode select systems. But talking about selecting things, one thing that is easy is the multi-terrain select system, again for this dynamic torque vectoring all-wheel drive. So you really only have maybe 6 different modes, I would say. There's 2, or at least 5. There's 2 on each side and then 1 here in the middle. So pushing this button down in the middle, that's normal mode. You have mud and sand mode over here, and then rock and dirt mode over here on the far right. Before you get to a small little cluster of buttons, you have the automatic brake hold and your electronic parking brake, not to mention a few more different buttons, including an additional drive mode, which is the snow mode. Gives you the best traction and best use of that all-wheel drive in icy conditions. Of course, you do have traction control, hill descent control, and the button to turn off that standard auto start stop system. Now, of course, talking about storage, you can't go without talking about this big center console, and I do mean it is big. Unfortunately, the whole thing doesn't lift up like this. It actually has sort of a sliding mechanism that moves it back, but once you actually pull it back, that is where you're going to find the standard wireless charger. Now, you can't just plunk your phone on there and actually expect it to charge. You do have to hit the power button in order to warm up the wireless charging module here, but it'll work with just about any normal smartphone. The only thing I would recommend is don't put any kind of a stopping device on the back or any kind of a thicker phone case, because it can confuse the wireless charging here and your phone may not charge but for more than a few seconds. But then as you look down underneath, I have a little bit of trash in here, excuse me for that, but I do have a pretty sizable storage area in here with a nice little removable tray as well. You can actually slide that back and forth depending on how much space you may actually need. There are no additional USBs or anything in there, so this area right here is primarily meant just for storage. Of course, as we look up here towards the roof, there are a couple of other little nice bits to go over. The first of which is you notice the very thinly bordered auto-dimming rear view mirror. And I talked about that rather peculiar placed camera in the back of this car. One flip of the trigger and suddenly you have a full high definition view looking right out the middle of your tailgate. Now, I wouldn't recommend driving with this on. Sometimes it can be a little bit distracting, but just know you can drive with it on if you so desire. But once you turn it off, all you get are the little icons here for the HomeLink garage door system and the generalized settings within this digitized auto-dimming rear view mirror. Now, looking up into these very bright overhead lights, we do have a couple of little extras. You have a sunglasses holder that also doubles as a rear mirror, so you can actually look into your back 5 seats of this car and take a look at what your rear passengers are doing. Again, you do have the interior lights, so the outer buttons here are for the interior lights. You have the SOS button in the middle, the button to turn on or off all the interior lights within the car, or just leave it to the setting for when the doors are open that the lights come on. And then you have the controls for this large panoramic sunroof that goes across the top, or moonroof, whatever you want to call it. For the shade, it's the trigger over here on the left, so you just push that back with one touch of a button. And then if you want to open the sunroof, you just do the same to the trigger on the right. Now, as much as I enjoyed my time up in the front of this Highlander, being here in the back is certainly not a horrible place to be either. To start with, up here on the door, you do have the manual retracting sunshades that you can put across at least both of the middle windows here, because of course you do have the 3/4 window back here for your third row passengers. You have more of this beautiful brown and beige accents here on the door. And in this case, we actually have a separate set of captain's chairs. You can actually get this car as an option with up to 8 seats in it, so you can get the full bench across the middle. Although most people I've talked to prefer the captain's chairs over the bench seat. Now, stepping here into the back, this is a very spacious place to be. Keeping in mind, I have that seat exactly where I want it, and just to reiterate, I am 6'1", so I am a little taller. I have a plentiful amount of room between my knees and the back of the driver's seat. If you are a little bit taller, you needn't worry, because you do have a nice bit of leather padding here across the back of the seat. And I mentioned with the climate control up there that this is a dual zone system. Well, I fooled you, because back here at the back of the center console, you not only have the controls for the heated rear seats, but you also have the controls for the third zone, the tri-zone system here for your rear occupants. So you have the automatic setting, the temperature control, the button to turn the system off, your fan speed, and pretty much everything else in between, including your climate zones in the middle. Not to mention, you probably can't see it because it's a little dark in here, but you do have two 2.1 amp charging ports down there at the bottom, and a 100 volt alternating current outlet down there as well, and that is for normally plugging in everything else under the sun. Now, I did mention that quite peculiar oddity, that $99 universal tablet holder in the back of this car, and this is it, if I can wedge it out of the seat. It is the most interesting looking little device ever. This little silver piece actually plugs into the collar that's around the upper part of the passenger seat, and of course that's used to hold things like your iPads, anything like that that you may need for entertainment here in the back. Of course, now Toyota has that. I kind of wish if they were going to put any kind of entertainment back here, they would put it maybe in the ceiling, or perhaps put some monitors on the back of both of the seats, or maybe just include two of these, I don't know, instead of just one. That kind of seems a little off-putting to only have one for one of your multiple rear occupants back here. Now, it's been quite a while since I've had a 3-row SUV of any kind in my life, and getting into the back seats has normally been a bit of a tedious challenge, but for me, all I have to do is lift up on this latch, the seat scoots forward with relative ease, and I get back here, and this is where things get, a little difficult. Oof. Sorry, I had to struggle there, but unfortunately, the floor in this car is so high that if I put this rear seat back, I can't even put it all the way upright. My knees are basically in my chest here. So as far as anyone bigger than, say, maybe a 2 or 3-year-old sitting in these back seats, that task is pretty much impossible. So I would say that the 3rd row of seats is primarily reserved only for children. So now that we've had a good walkthrough and drive of this Highlander Platinum, the last question I'm sure you're probably asking is, well, let's say you're a husband, wife, mom, dad, grandparent, whomever, and you want to make sure that whoever you put in this vehicle is going to be kept as safe as possible. Well, I have some unfortunate news. At the time of this review, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration has not yet rated the 2020 Highlander, but rest assured, as soon as those results go live, I will post a caption at the bottom of this video letting you know just how safe this car is. But from where I've been driving it, it feels like a pretty safe vehicle to me. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this review and drive of the all-new 2020 Toyota Highlander Platinum all-wheel drive. If you enjoyed this review as much as I did, please leave this video a thumbs up, and also while you're at it, hit that subscribe button down below, because trust me, it will benefit the both of us in the end. At the end of the day, however, I have to give another massive shout out to my friends at Toyota USA, i.e. Gulf States Toyota, for lending me this vehicle for an entire week to have some fun with. But at the end of the day, guys, I hope you enjoyed the review, and I will see you all next time. Take care, everybody, and stay safe.